I've already done it.
Okay.
When I answered your call, the audio of the settings window went away,
Okay.
and you can still hear me. So we'll try it like this.
Cool.
At this current moment, we're using the laptop's microphone rather than the one built into the headphone.
Okay.
And I'm wearing this headphone because the plugs are different.
Okay.
This one has the plug that's got the microphone built in the same way that it would be on a cell phone. And this kind of plug is the one that I have. You can see the difference because the microphone connection is there. So now I'm using the built-in connection standard headphone.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know why that works, but
Yeah, it's working. It's no problem so far.
all right. So the first part of the recording, I don't think we'll upload. So what we can do is a quick review that you were talking about. Go ahead and describe it again. An imaginary auditor.
Okay, yeah. So I'd heard, I think his name, I know that the podcast is called Deconstructing Yourself, and it's the first episode. I think it's Kenneth Folk, who I've never heard his stuff before. But but it's just interesting interviews. And this one was about this kind of technique that he says that he uses, which is basically during the day, similar to what you said. So he says it doesn't make sense to think of trying to constantly be on your breath or constantly being mindful. Just like what you've said, he said you think about it as short spurts of intense mindfulness, and you do this regularly enough, and this kind of becomes this is how you increase your mindfulness. It's like an exercise, like just like what you've said. What he said that he does is he asks himself throughout the day, are you mindful now? And he thinks about it like there's an auditor. So, like, there's someone who's basically going to see whether he's just bullshitting or not. So, for instance, I'll give you an example. So, he'll say, like, he'll ask himself, am I mindful now? And then he'll say, yeah, there's the breath. But then the idea is that it makes him, rather than just be content with that, the auditor will say, I mean, there's not an actual auditor and there's not an actual conversation he has, but the whole point is that he goes an extra step in order to be convinced, in order to convince himself that he's actually being mindful, basically. And
All
so he'll get
right.
to the point where like there's a little dryness on my lip on the left side, some more detail that is harder just to kind of, gloss over, basically. So I've been incorporating that just for a few days into my normal practice that I've had, which is I basically do that every time I'm grasping or releasing. So when I grasp
Okay.
or release, I basically ask myself, are you mindful? And yeah, and then I come up with a convincing examples that of something I'm mindful, like that I'm in a mindful state that normally I wouldn't be able to come up with. Does that make sense?
Um, both yes and no.
Okay.
Um, it makes sense as a natural process that will happen, but it doesn't make sense um, in this actual extra uh, mental conversation.
Yeah.
All right. Huh, it's almost like you're riding an elevator down, but inside of the elevator, it doesn't show you what floor that you're on as you're going down. So it's like stopping the elevator, opening the door so that you can suss out what floor you're on before you get back on the elevator and continue going down. It does not look like, in fact, to me, that it's useful as an exercise like that. So let me show you or talk about it in another regard, and that is that as you come back to this present moment, just relax. You don't have to question yourself about how relaxed you are. Just allow yourself to relax.
Mm-hmm.
That asking that extra question prevents you from actually relaxing. It's almost like saying, "Are you satisfied enough?"
Okay.
The answer is, if you're satisfied, you're satisfied. Now, over time, that satisfaction will deepen. That relaxation, once you keep practicing, you really get good at it.
Okay. I,
Okay, so that would be my take on it. Now, that might be a difference of, let's say, style.
I'll just say that the reason that I found it helpful was that I found myself, even though the bells I've made a, so I'm not doing the bells like I said. I've replaced it with this grasping, releasing,
Okay,
instead of the bells, and I've gotten used to that. And I've actually today is probably the best mindful day I've had with the grasping and releasing, um,
okay,
which is awesome. So I guess the thing is that with the bells and with the grasping releasing, sometimes I don't put in enough effort to bring myself into the here now. Sometimes I'm content just knowing I'm grasping and releasing basically. And I think I'm going through this process, but I'm really just kind of like better than normal because I'm being aware that I'm grasping and releasing.
all right. Here's one of the points that I think is the key to here, which puts these two things together. And that's the part that you're talking about, that if you're doing it only halfway, then one of the qualities is that you're not slowing it down. But if you intentionally slow down the hands the hand movements, that will really bring you into, let us say, a more clear. So that's actually a way of asking yourself that. Are you mindful enough right now? The answer is, I'm mindful enough to slow things down.
Hmm.
I'm mindful enough with my speech to slow down the speech. I'm mindful enough. And so I'm only, I'm almost ready to give you an additional assignment with that. Um, but that I particularly understand what you're saying, because it is quite possible for a student, uh, let us say, to slough it off. In fact, what's happening even with a more advanced student is that point in time when we recognize that the mind has wandered away, the question is, do we really clean things out, or do we just leave the hindrances there and just check off the box, okay, mindfulness, without actually also taking right effort
Yeah,
and right view and right attitude? So we've
yeah,
got to change all three of those things,
yeah.
and that slowing down process is part that will bring that right effort into gear and
Hmm.
bring in that satisfaction. That's the right attitude, is that you're satisfied with it. So yes, I understand that there is a kind of way that students will have only sati, but not bring in either right effort or right attitude.
Hmm.
So that's what it probably is the right question to ask this
Hmm.
auditor, or the auditor is asking this question: are you bringing all of the Eightfold Noble Path into play here, or is it only sati, which leaves the mind in a hindered state, so that
Hmm.
you can be aware of your hands, but you haven't slowed anything down, you haven't come to the present moment. You're looking at, or you're noticing the hands the way that you would normally notice your hands, as opposed to using this as a point of reference to be here now. Okay, to actually come back to the breath and take a deep breath.
Hmm.
Okay, so in that regard, asking yourself that question in this regard would be: are you actually practicing all of the Eightfold Noble Path rather than just Sati, that you're bringing in right effort, that you're bringing in right attitude, that you've already got right view at this level. And so, in that regard, that right view here is the investigation. So, are you investigating? Which, in another way of looking at it, this auditor that you're talking about is the investigation. Are you actually doing the investigation in the sense of making sure that you've got right view, you've got right attitude, you've got right effort? That's the one that's possibly missing in this case.
Yeah.
Now, right effort is a balanced effort. It's very easy to do once you pay attention to doing that. Generally, wrong effort is either not any at all or way too much. Okay, working too hard at it. And I've had some students that it's hard to convince them to stop working so hard and start relaxing. That's what this is about. So pay more attention then to the out breath, your exhale, because the exhale is the relaxed part. Taking in air actually takes effort, but exhale is a relaxation of that same effort. So that relaxation, make sure whenever you're doing that, let us say, using these tricks of whenever this happens, then we're going to take a moment of mindfulness. This moment of mindfulness is going to have satisfaction, it's going to have joy, it's going to have right attitude, it's going to have all of the constituent components. So if that needs to be a checklist for you that you're using in this regard, then please do that. But you're using merely the word deeper. I'm actually pointing out each step on the staircase going deeper.
Yeah.
Yeah. Adding to that mindfulness, right effort. Adding to that mindfulness, right attitude. So that you really do take a moment of relaxation, of real joy, of contentment, and start to practice those things. Yeah, so now your Sati is getting in gear. We've got to get these other factors of the path in gear. And that's what that technique, now that I'm thinking through it, that's what this whole thing is about, is to make sure that you're practicing all of the pieces of the Eightfold Path.
Yeah, I mean, what I find is when I do it, I probably do just exactly what you want me to be doing, in the sense that I first look for body stuff, because that's the easiest thing, because you can definitely tell if in your body there's stuff that you weren't aware of before that you can become aware of. That's pretty convincing right away. And
shoulders up in the air, tensions, right, exactly.
And then it gets more subtle, and then I might notice something on my toe or something that I normally wouldn't notice. And then I usually go, I mean, then often Vedana is another thing that maybe because I've done it in the past, it's something else that is pretty clear to me. I've noticed that there's always some unpleasantness in this eye, like every time, that I mean, it's not a big deal, but it's funny because I've never known that. But every time I do that and I become aware of the moment, there's like a little bit of negative Vedana in this left eye. It's like an air bubble that I always want to go like that too.
Perhaps the right word to use, and I'm only doing this because of my love and attachment for Gawanka, but he used the word sensation, because that's what it is. It's a physical sensation of the body. It is an expression of touch. That something in the eye is touching something else in the eye, or in that vicinity. And so that gives rise to sensation. The Vedana is, do you like that sensation or do you not like that sensation? The answer is, I don't like it.
Yeah. But it's funny because it's always there, but at a very subtle level to where like you get used to it. But it's funny because I never realized that, literally, because like today when I was doing this all day, every time I'd sort of check in with this, like it was there. So it's really funny to me that I don't. I mean, I'm not sure it's always there, but today it was there all day, and I wouldn't
Hmm.
have known that unless I was doing this every time I was grabbing or letting go of something. So I'm kind of intrigued to know whether it's going to be there tomorrow all day too, and if it's just something that I just never noticed before.
Well, even if it's been there for a long time and you start to notice it, there will come a time when you begin to bring that also into that awareness, but it's a whole bag or a whole collection of things that you're aware of, so it's just another item.
Yeah.
And that in fact the whole body becomes very much alive through this technique, so that you begin to feel things you never felt before.
Mm-hmm.
And in the beginning, when we start feeling things we never felt before, it's generally unpleasant sensations. And I call them unpleasant in the sense that those sensations, we don't like them.
Mm-hmm.
So you also should start, in this regard, start looking for the sensations of the body that are quite pleasant. An example would be during a shower, that some students say they really do have a nibbana moment in the shower. They turn that hot water on that hot. All right. So those are kind of things to look for, like that, to look for the pleasure in the body. Another example would be breeze in like an oscillating fan. Every time the fan comes back and forth, you can feel that breeze change.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I think meditation in this regard was designed for the tropics. It wasn't really designed well for northern Canada. But you're in
Yeah.
Atlanta, and so you can take your shirt off from time to time.
Yeah. I noticed that. So I've started to do this a little bit because exactly as you're saying, I did notice that most of the things that are most salient are the negative Vedana. When I'm just going out to look, that there's a little discomfort here or there, and that's the first place my mind goes when I'm trying to tune into it. So then I don't want to be unbalanced and just be negative about it. So then I look for the positive stuff too. And yeah, it's if I'm outside, it's always the sun, it's always the wind. Those two are always positive Vedana. Um, and yeah, usually like warmth. That's a big one. So like right now, if I were to say, it would be that. Uh,
Hmm. Yes, temperature change, sunlight, often walking out in the sun in the very beginning feels very good, the warmth of the sun.
yeah,
Uh, but in the tropics, that sun needs to be interrupted with shade, and so
yeah,
that you appreciate the shade, and then you appreciate the sun, and then you
yeah.
appreciate the shade.
Hmm.
And also during the hot part of the day, if you're walking barefoot, you have to really be careful. For instance, walking on cement, you have to be very careful about it.
Yeah,
So you look at which right side of the road that you're going to walk on to make sure that you can walk beside the cement without having to step right on it much.
yeah. I've got flip flops. I'm good.
Well, the only time that the monks, as an intentional practice, go barefoot is at Bendabat, which is early morning anyway. So the heat of the day is not out. It's in the afternoon. And the Buddha really didn't want monks out in the afternoon anyway, because that was normal siesta time for the community.
Hmm.
Um, but the point that I'm making is start looking for pleasurable things in the body. One of the things that you can practice mostly in sitting meditation, but since you're working with the hands anyway, is that you can gain great pleasure from the touch of the skin of the fingers. For instance, doing this. Very, very pleasurable to touch the thumbs.
Hmm.
Or even if you look at it like this, rolling them around very slowly with the intention of experiencing the thumbs touch each other in a very sensual way,
Hmm.
very pleasurable. So these are things also with the hands to find extremely pleasurable um, touching. Even touching the fingertips like this,
Mm-hmm.
because that's a huge amount of information. It's actually quite amazing to just touch the fingers, the little one on the like
Yeah.
this, and just roll them around and just touch them just a little bit. Get some sensation going.
Mm-hmm.
Can be very, very pleasurable. So these are the kinds of things that you can do.
I'm doing
Taking
it
a
right
hot
now.
shower. Yeah. Begin to see the pleasure in the body
Mm-hmm.
because we deal so much with the unpleasurable, trying to avoid displeasure. And then when we look for pleasure, we always look for it from the outside world
Mm-hmm.
instead of being able to just see the body itself as just a very nice toy.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm going to add now another point or two. The first one, at in most big cities, there's a lot of doors. How many times do you go through a door that you have to actually open and sometimes close after yourself in a day? How many times do you open a door during the day?
You want me to guess?
Yeah, make a guess.
Right.
A normal day at work or something.
It doesn't count if it's a doorway without me having to open it, or would that count?
No, if it's an automatic door or if it's a door that's already open, it doesn't count. No, I'm talking about doors you have to open.
Okay. I'm gonna guess. Um, I would guess 45.
All right. So now you have 45 new opportunities.
Mm-hmm.
Here's what happens when people go through a doorway with a door that they have to open. That's fairly easy to open. Like you don't have to stop and get your keys out and turn, and unlock the door and all of that. But just opening a door by the turn of the knob or pushing on a bar. In
Mm-hmm.
many commercial places, you have to push a bar that will then allow the door to open. Anything like this. Normally, when people do that, their intention is to continue through. They see this as a minor temporary barrier. The new intention now is to see this as an opportunity to break your stride. So the first thing that you're going to do is stop and stand. Change your posture from a walking posture to a standing posture. Then open the door.
Okay. I'm gonna
Mhm.
write this down. Okay.
Then open the door and go through it. After you change your gait, you're going to change your gait from walking to a standing posture. You're not going to be on your way when you open the door. Most people, while they're walking, they're trying to open the door while they're still walking so that they don't even have to change their gait. So, intentionally now, we're going to stop. We're going to take a deep breath and we're going to really pay attention to the exhale. Give ourselves a little nibbana moment. Congratulate yourself for remembering that you can, in fact, stop when there's a barrier.
Mm-hmm.
So you stop. You get yourself good again. We're talking about 1, 2 to 5 seconds. A little nibbana, and then you open the door, and then you go on.
Mm-hmm.
That's going to give you 45 new nibbanas a day.
But
and you don't have you don't have to count how many doorways you go through. That's not an important point. The
yeah,
important point, and if you're walking with other people, then this is not really an important thing to do. But when you're on your own,
but I should be having these Nibbana moments anyway, right? If I'm grabbing the handle of the door.
as you're grabbing the handle of the door, alrighty, but you can do it then. But if you stop
Mm-hmm.
and then slowly grab the handle of the door, you're now, in fact, incorporating both of the practices of stopping in front of a door and being mindful of your hands.
Mm-hmm.
Hmm. So you were kind of already doing this, but now we're going to make a full stop.
Okay. And only if it's a closed door and I have to open the door.
Yes, only if it's a barrier or an obstacle.
Mm-hmm.
If it's a doorway, or whether it's a group of people opening and holding doors for each other and all of that kind of stuff, then that's not part of this game.
Mm-hmm.
Part of this game is when you're walking alone. When
Yeah.
you're about to go into the bathroom, you have to normally you just push the door open to go into the bathroom. When you get to that door, stop and say, and then you push on it with that hand.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Okay.
Now the hard one. That's the easy one.
All right.
The hard one. Let me ask you this question. How many times do you get up out of your chair or any chair in a typical day?
Okay. Not bed, but just chair.
Just a chair.
Does couch count?
Couches count.
Okay. So,
Anytime you're making a major change of posture, so I would say that that also would count for beds, though I hadn't thought about it. But yes, we'll add beds in there. We're talking about a change of posture, and here's what's going on. You don't have to actually count them up. I don't really care. I'm just
40.
trying to get you thinking about it. Okay. So we're nearly up to 100 now with new things to do today. This is going to be a real mindfulness game if you really ask that uh, auditor, am I really doing this every time I stand up?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so here's how we do it. Normally, when people get out of a chair, it's because they have an intention of going someplace, going for a cup of coffee, going to the bathroom, going to see the boss, going home. But it's always going. In that regard, when people normally stand up, they stand up in a posture that has the gait of walking already built into it. So we move from a sitting to a walking position. And we cut out that intermediate position of stopping and standing.
Mm-hmm.
So we're going to also add this every time that you get out of a chair, you're not going to get out of the chair with the intention to go someplace. You're going to get out of the chair with the intention of standing up and stopping and taking a deep breath and making sure that you're really mindful. Ask that auditor, am I mindful while I'm standing up in this? And then you start walking.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
This is not going to take much time out of your day, but it's certainly going to take work for you to remember this. And every time that you catch yourself getting up and now you're walking away from the chair and you remember, aha, I didn't stand. I saw that. I caught you. You did not stop and stand. You actually got up and walked.
Okay, so these are both related. So it's basically inserting standing posture to kind of punctuate changes either between like lying or sitting down and walking or
Hmm.
just walking through a door, right? So it's the same
Exactly.
thing. We're punctuating it with a standing. Okay.
Yes. Yes. Punctuating it. Right. Puncture it.
Okay.
Yes, that's a good point. Yes, punctuate this. And also punctuate it in the sense of actually really stopping, really standing for a moment, really taking that deep breath, really pay attention to that out breath, that relaxed out breath.
Mm-hmm.
And start checking that list off. Am I satisfied in this moment? Am I secure in this moment? Am I satisfied with this moment? Is
Yeah.
this a safe moment? All of those powers that we have, and check with those. And you can do it almost non-verbally,
Mm-hmm.
within the sense of all of those things put together are required as a group in order to relax. If you're not satisfied, if you're not successful, if you're not safe, if you're not secure, if you're not content, then you're not relaxed. But if you've got all of those qualities, then that relaxed, this is good.
Mm-hmm. Yep, sounds good.
Yes,
Sounds like
so
a
this will be
challenge.
it is a challenge, and I think that you're up for it, but also recognize that it is also a skill of mindfulness, because your mind will be active. It will have the intention of doing something, like walking through to a destination. And this door is just a minor thing out of the way. I'm not going to pay attention to this door at all. And people go through doors all the time mindlessly.
Mm-hmm.
Now you're going to stop and say, I recognize this is a barrier.
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to stop and I'm going to take a deep breath. And I'm going to be very satisfied. And then I'm going to touch that doorknob and turn it
Mm-hmm.
or push that door or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
This is the way of practice. So if you forget to do that, then how long is it going to take you to remember? Oh, the door that I just walked through, I didn't stand.
This sounds hard, but it doesn't sound as hard as the hands to me. So I think I can do this.
You can do this. You can do this. And that you didn't do the hands perfectly when you were starting. It was a skill.
I still don't do it perfectly, but I do it a lot better.
Yes, exactly. That's the whole point. That big smile that you have. Yeah, things are getting better. They really are getting better. As you develop these skills, things are really getting better. Now, this is something that so many people misunderstand, because they think that mindfulness is to be developed in a sitting posture while you're in seclusion. Well, yes, that's true to begin with, because living one's life mindfully is a lot of work if you've never done it before. So we want to get isolated so that the only thing that we have to deal with is the obstructions of the mind, the hindrances in the mind. But once we come to understand that no matter how obstructed the mind is, I can be successful. I can clean that stuff out. I can come to this present moment. I can see the way things are. In this regard, I can take a deep, happy, long breath and enjoy this one particular moment.
Mm-hmm.
That's what we do with the sitting posture. We need to learn to be able to do that throughout the day. Um, I probably even ask you this question, but if someone is going to say, "Oh, I'm going to do a sitting meditation one hour a day every day without missing," one of the ways of looking at that is, oh, that means that you're not going to be mindful. You're not going to be practicing new skills for 23 hours a day. You're going to let the old habits take over, and you're only going to practice for 1 hour a day. Well, that might be good in the very, very beginning. But after a while, we need to start bringing things in more and more
Yeah.
so that we can liven this whole practice up into or ramping it up. This is one's right effort now. The right effort is going to take in with that sati, that we're going to act. The right effort in this case, in both cases of this new practice that I'm giving you, is to stop.
Mm-hmm.
That's going to take effort because you were walking through that door. Now you've got to stop. When you were sitting in that chair, the intention was to go someplace, but now you've got to stop, and that's going to take a new kind of effort.
Mm-hmm.
Even with the hands, I never told you to stop. What I told you to do was, or mentioned to you, not telling you, was to slow down, intentionally slow down. Here, we're actually making a big change in that regard because we're going to stop.
Mm-hmm.
So when you get up out of the bed, you stand up and stop. You don't take one step away from the bed.
Yeah.
When you stand up at the bed, ever how you got onto both feet,
On the what?
then you onto both feet.
Oh, okay.
Okay, then you stand up.
Yeah. I actually find that is the least mindful I am is right when I get out of bed, I find.
Okay.
So
So
maybe
when you're
it's
laying in bed, it's good to have the sati. Okay, when I get up, I'm going to do this getting up out of bed mindfully.
hmm
Hmm.
yeah. Yeah, no, that sounds like a good challenge. Um yeah, no, I'm excited I can finally do the hands sometimes.
Good, good.
Just took a year.
Continue working with the joy, also gladdening the mind. Every opportunity that you have, get that success going. Aha, I can do this.
hmm
So that eventually, um, as we were talking about before with the sitting meditation, that no matter how, let us say, obstructive the mind is, or how obstructed it is with internal hindrances. Now, when we're out during the day, we're actually bombarded with all kinds of things and stimulus and whatnot like that. And so we need to bring practices throughout the day to get us settled in so that we can get into those little amount of moments over and over and over and over and over again throughout the day.
hmm
The more of them that you have, the better,
hmm
as opposed to making them really, really excellent. A few really, really excellent moments is not quite as good as a whole lot of really good moments.
Yeah.
And so make sure, ask that auditor, is this one actually good enough? Is it good enough? The answer, yeah, it's good. Is it good enough? Is it relaxed? So that goes through all of that list of, yeah, it's good enough. I'm satisfied.
Yeah.
This is a successful moment.
Yeah. No, I'm excited to try that.
Excellent. Well, do we have anything else then to talk about?
um yeah, I do have a question. I'm trying to think of if I want to record it or not. Yeah, so I was thinking basically I'm in a situation in which I might be able to, how most people might negotiate with the boss about getting a raise or something. I was thinking about doing something like that, but for time off. And the reason would be that I could do more meditation retreats, basically, because I don't have a whole lot of time off, generally speaking. And so, I think I have 2 weeks or something like that. And sometimes I can, around the edges, around Christmas, I can take a little bit more. But so, I mean, if I were able to, say, once a year, take off, maybe be able to do a 2 week retreat or a 3 week retreat or something like that. Is that a
Most,
substantial thing? I mean, does that make sense?
yes. And that the way that I would approach it with him would be um, to look at the schedule of the various retreat centers. If there is a Goenka retreat center, I think that they're doing some stuff in Florida somewhere. Um, I don't know about Texas as a retreat center, but I think that Goenka is around there someplace.
I
So
went
if
to
you
one
can,
in I went to one in Georgia, in South Georgia, at the beginning of
uh-huh.
this year. It was over the new, so I did it over the New Year's because I had that time off. So I did it just basically over Christmas and over New Year's. So I didn't have to
All
take.
right. Well, if they're doing that every year, then that's the solution to your question without putting things in danger with your boss.
Yeah,
All
I
you
mean,
can do is check it out with him. Is it that this is my intention to take this time off to go do this retreat?
yeah. And he's incredibly understanding with this. I think in some part because he's seen me improve, and partly from his perspective. At work, I've improved considerably. My attention is so much better than it was. Um, Yeah, but I would probably be able to get more time off. So I imagine that rather than really making a money grab, I would imagine I could get enough off that I could probably do a month long sort of retreat if that was sufficiently beneficial. I mean, would that be sufficiently beneficial
All
to
right. Here's then the question for us to discuss that. First off, where do you know of that you can, let us say, have a scheduled retreat that would be a month long?
so um the only so there are two ways to do it that I know of. One, so with Goenka, I wouldn't be able to do that now because you have to have done like 4 retreats there. In addition to the fact that I don't really want to only do Goenka because I don't want to only be doing body scanning the whole time, and I don't want to have to lie to them about what I'm doing.
That's one of the problems of the Goenka retreat, right? Is everybody's got to do the same thing over and over and over again. Step three, Anapanasati, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. Yes, when there's a whole lot more to be done. That was basically the only argument that I had with Goenka's method. Everything he did was absolutely correct. If you're going to take 3 grades of school, take Goenka's first 3 grades. But if you want
Yeah,
to go to high school, don't keep taking Goenka's first 3 grades.
yeah. So there's a guy named Tucker Peck who he teaches the Mind Illuminated. He's got a various backgrounds, but he
He's
teaches.
in Seattle.
Um, he's not. I think he's now in California. He was in Arizona for a while. Um,
He's somehow connected with Noah.
Probably. Yeah, that would make sense. I know because I know one of Noah's friends pretty well, and I know that he's friends with Tucker because he goes to Seattle a lot. So I imagine he goes to Seattle a lot. I don't think he lives there. Um, but he recommended a place. It's in Arizona, and it's basically it's a private retreat. So there isn't anyone. There isn't any group anything. You're on your own, but it's cheap. I mean, cheap is a relative term, but I've not looked it up, but the impression I get is around $20 a day or something like that or less. I don't know if that's accurate, but that's the impression I get. I would have to bring in my own food if I did it that way, because if you pay for food, you're paying a lot more money. But that's
Hmm.
fine because I could make my own food. That's fine. I would just drive in and bring it in my car or something like that. So that's
Well,
thinking.
here's an option for you. Georgia has quite a number of state parks.
Hmm.
You could load up some camping gear in your car and go stay in the woods for a week. Take your food and go, or two, or a month.
I kind of like that idea. Um,
If you're not going to get any instruction, then there's no need to go to a particular place. I mean, they may have some sitting Buddhas, but here I'll send you one.
I guess I would maybe a month. I wouldn't want to do that for a month, but I might want to do that for a week. And in fact, now that we're talking about this, I don't see why I just don't do that for like a weekend every once in a while. Because my
Exactly so.
because my problem with I've tried this here at my apartment, and there's just so much distraction. But if I were to be basically without internet
Hmm.
and without any options of anything else to do, I think I'd get a lot of meditation done.
Yes. Walking meditation, too.
Yeah,
Walking meditation in the forest sounds great.
yeah, I like that idea. I wouldn't want to do that for a month, but yeah, but I think I'm gonna look the,
My first way of saying it was for a week, but
yeah,
you
yeah,
said down to a weekend.
yeah, yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. A month capping is a bit much for neophytes. You need a
No,
few.
I think I could do it for a week because I mean, I have a tent and everything.
Uh-huh.
Yeah. Yeah, but so I've been on two retreats now. Okay. Well, I went on I guess three. One was like 4 days, so it was like a little mini one. Um, they've hugely benefited my practice in ways more than I would have expected. Like it seems like there's a bump right afterward, but it seems like there's almost a permanent effect that it's had, or it's given a lot of extra
It
momentum.
is called skill development. The
Yeah.
skills that you develop in those retreats are now skills. If you keep exercising them, they're strong. The problem is that if you stop after the retreat, then those skills that you developed in the retreat will they'll they'll get lax again. They won't be as strong. But if you continue on with it, then these are actually not permanent, but
Yeah.
built up skills. That's the way to talk about it. Is the building up process. Definitely.
Yeah, because I mean, basically, what I've been doing is I've not been going. I like traveling a lot. I've not been going on vacations because I've been doing. If I have time off, I do a retreat because
Hmm.
the effect is longer last. As opposed to if I go on a vacation, I might have a story or two to tell about it that comes up from time to time. But outside of that, it's done when I'm back. So it
Yes.
doesn't
Uh-huh.
make a lot of logical sense to me in comparison.
American vacations are so bad that people come back exhausted from their vacation.
Yeah, I mean, I like scuba diving, so that's what my typical vacation would be normally. Would be scuba diving. But
Well, you got to be really mindful of your breath while you're scuba diving.
yeah, in fact, I am curious. I've not been in the last year, but I'm curious now that I've improved at meditation if my air consumption would improve too. I don't know, but I'm curious about that.
Hmm. Yes, that would be something worthy of investigation.
Yeah. So I guess a big question is, so I've gotten a lot of benefit out of doing, so I've done a 4 day, a 7 day, and a 10 day. The 10 day was the Goenka. Those are the retreats
Hmm.
I've done. If I were to be able to do a month, is that vastly different from, I mean, I guess what I'm asking is it like an incremental difference or is it a huge difference in terms of the benefits I would get from it? Or is it worth just trying to get in a couple week-long ones as opposed to putting all my eggs in oh, I've cut out this 1 month period of time?
I would say that for now, doing several week long retreats would be as beneficial
Okay.
as a month retreat. All right.
Uh-huh.
Now, a longer retreat will have its own benefit. Here's really what happens with long retreats. It happens exactly the same way that it happens with the short retreats, except that there's a beginning, a middle, and an end. And in the long retreats, the middle is really, really long.
Mm-hmm.
In the beginning, you have to get into the retreat. That people come with a lot of past stuff. The first day or two is really difficult. Now they're settling in, and now from after the third day, then they can pay pretty close attention. Generally, for Goenka, the sixth day is a hard day. But by day seven, what's going on is that now the retreat's almost over, almost like light at the end of the tunnel. So now the students start preparing for getting out of the retreat, and so they get sloppy. It's only day 3 through 6 of a 10-day retreat that they are actually getting stuff done. But after you do one retreat after another, that beginning and end gets really short.
Yeah.
So that middle time of good practice happens throughout the week, and it doesn't matter whether you do it for a month, because in the month's case, the beginning of how long does it take you to settle into the retreat, and then right at the end of it, how long does it take you to come out of the retreat, are
Mm-hmm.
the factors that we have to look at. And when you look at them um, for an experienced retreater, and you're getting there, then a week long would be enough. You'll get the benefit out of 2 week-long retreats that would be the same as 1 2-week retreat. Now, there may come a time when you want to actually take a sabbatical from your job and go find someplace to stay 3 or 4 months, which is exactly what Pablo is doing right now.
Where?
Well, he just left this island. I think that they're on their way back to France now.
Mm-hmm.
But he came about March the 3rd. So he spent all of March, all of April, and nearly all of May.
Mm-hmm.
And he was mostly at Dham Kiem, but he also did retreat at Deepa Bhawan with Achan Dhammavitu. And then he did a volunteer for the big retreat at Wat Suan Mot. But most of the time he spent at Deepa Bhawan, which was basically secluded in private, living the life of a monk.
So I'm imagining that they have rules about how long. I imagine the reason he did 3 is that they have rules for how long he could stay at any of them individually. Is that no?
No, it was always an open question, in the sense of after he does the retreat at Deepa Bhawan, is he going to stay at Deepa Bhawan or is he going to go back to Dham Kiem? When he's at Dham Kiem, they actually invited him to help do the volunteer. That was Su Tun, because Tun was actually over at Deepa Bhawan during the big retreat at Wat Suan Mok, help doing the teaching. So he normally volunteers at one retreat, but he's over there helping teaching at the other retreats, and so Pablo kind of took his place to do the volunteer work.
Mm-hmm.
But Dham Kiem is a marvelous place. It's got room for 40 or 50 Westerners. It was designed for Westerners. It was built for Westerners. And for a while during the lifetime of Bhikkhu Buddhadasa, it was getting quite populated. There was a lot of people staying there. But over the years, after Bhikkhu Buddhadasa died, and especially in 2004 or 5, when Santikaro disrobed, there were fewer and fewer people staying there. In fact, for a while, it was empty. But now there's a regular population of about 4 to 10 people there. But like I said, they've got room for 50.
Mm-hmm.
Everything is provided. If for eating, you go out with the monks and go on Bendabat, and there's a number of routes around there, so they can handle the population.
Mm-hmm.
The lay people in that area, in that neighborhood, would like it if there was a lot. Now, when you go for Bendabat, you've got to go with a monk. He's the one that they give the alms food to, and then after he gets it, he will give it to the laymen for carrying. They're more like a bag or a pocket or a wheelbarrow than they are actually out on Bendabat. They're just there with the monk.
Yeah.
So it's a really good experience. Pablo really enjoyed it. He had all kinds of good things to say about going out with the monks for breakfast.
Mm-hmm.
One of them is free food.
Yeah.
Really good food, too.
Cool.
And so if you're going to do a really, really long retreat, like 3, 4, 5 months, then the way to do it is by getting a cheap flight over here and then live basically free. Very little money.
Mm-hmm. How much?
The most expensive would be $6 a day.
Not
including
bad.
food. Including food.
Okay. So that seems like that might make sense for like a long-ish retreat then. So,
Yes,
okay.
exactly. For longish retreats, right. But for 10-day retreats, week retreats, it's better to stay and do a retreat wherever you can. Because you're not there for the instruction of the retreat itself. You've kind of gotten your practice established.
Okay, so I have a question then. So at those places, So I went on a retreat, the 4 day one, and I thought it was good, and I thought that the teacher was good, but I would have preferred it to be less. I'd have preferred it to be more time without listening to people talking. So, like, they had a Dharma lesson every night. And again, like, he was very good, but I would have preferred just to been on my own, I think.
Okay. Well, you might in fact be able to clear that with the teacher. You can just ask permission. Say, I've had a lot of Dhamma, I've been online and whatnot
Yeah.
like that. So that's one thing. Here's the other thing, and this one I'm talking about specifically Goenka. There is a rule within the Goenka that they do want you to practice what they're teaching, but you're already practicing what they're teaching.
Yeah.
Okay, and here's what I'm getting at. In the very early days of Goenka in India, that most of the retreats were done in Hindi, not
Mm-hmm.
English. And
Mm-hmm.
in the Hindi retreats, naturally, you're going to have a lot of Hindus that are coming for those retreats. And they were doing a lot of stuff that they were already knew how to do.
Mm-hmm.
Some of them would even do pujas in the sense of bringing devices, lighting incense, lighting candles, ringing bells, playing with beads, and doing all kinds of other stuff. And he put a stop to all of that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
And he did, no, these are the instructions, and you need to follow these instructions. We're going to do Anapana Sati.
Yeah.
They use the word Anapana, but obviously it's Anapana Sati, mindfulness of breathing. Okay. And so the problem was is that people were doing all kinds of other practices from all kinds of other religions, but you're already doing anapanasati, you're already doing body scans. And so I don't, even if you were going to be doing another Goenka retreat, I don't see that what they're doing would be counterproductive if you did it exactly the way that they were telling you. Or you can do it in the sense of when they're doing the body scan guided meditation, go ahead and do that with that guided meditation. But when you're off on your own, you don't have to continue to do just the body scans. You can light the body up like a light bulb if you want to instead.
Mm-hmm.
I mention that because I would consider that fourth jhana.
Yeah. There was a so I almost the whole time did exactly what they said. I I think maybe I did, but I had a sometimes I have these kind of involuntary movements, and at one point it got kind of a little bit, I don't know, it was more noticeable than normal, and the instructor basically told me not to do that. And so I had to basically suppress myself from doing that, which was kind of
Doing exactly what now?
I had sometimes I get sort of like involuntary movements, like like a muscle spasm or something like that.
When he told you not to do that, was that because you told him that that was happening in one of your private sessions? Or did he actually see that
I
in
saw it.
you and then come to you?
That's what happened. So after the break, because it wasn't just a thing, it got a little. Occasionally, it feels like there's like a little bit of rocking to it.
Mhm.
Um, and it just happened. It just was like one. It was when we were. It was like on the fourth day or something like that when we had done the Anapana Sati for a few days, and yeah, and he didn't like that, which is fine. It wasn't a big deal, but it was. It's not like I'm trying to do that, but it is the case that I could suppress it if I wanted to, so I just did that. And it's fine because it wasn't as big an issue for the body scan as it was when I did the breath. Maybe because I'm used to doing the breath, I don't quite know.
Okay.
But yeah, anyway, I'm just kind of commenting. Yes, I mean maybe if I can't figure out another solution, I'm on board with that because it was an awesome opportunity for me, and I think it's great that they do that. And I got a lot out of it. Um, but yeah, I prefer to do it in a way that I mean, I understand what you're saying, which is that the original instructions for why they don't want you to do other things, there's a reason, and I'm not really violating that reason. But it still is the case that the instructor is going to ask me how my last body scan worked, and if I'm not doing the instructions they gave, I would have to lie to him, which I don't really want to do,
Well,
regardless of whether.
you don't have to lie to him when you tell him, "Oh, he's wonderful."
Last time they asked pretty specific questions. So anyway, like I'm not above it, but I prefer not to. But if I have no other options, then it is what it is. But I'd prefer not to. Um, if they didn't ask every day about that, I probably would have just done my own thing. But I just didn't like lying to the dude. But
Uh-huh. Well, during that time, I assume that people have an interview once a day.
so the interviews, I guess, are what they do is they'll have you up in groups of five or something, and they'll just ask. And they're very quick, so they'll ask for maybe like 20 seconds a person, maybe a minute a person. If you want to go for an interview outside of that time, you can. I never did.
Hmm.
Um, because all the weird stuff that I experienced, I already knew what was coming. I'd already experienced some amount of weirdness before in terms of involuntary stuff. Because a lot of people there didn't most people there didn't have a regular practice at all, and I was
Exactly.
doing an hour a day, so I actually was a lot more prepared than most people for that. I think at the end I could have done another week. I was loving it, to be honest. So I felt like, wow, my mind is really still right now. This is really incredible. So, but some people apparently like were losing it, and they were just like going on walks all the time, and like and then I realized at the meditation hall the last day it was just me and one other person there who was showing up because it starts at like 5 or something is when they start sitting, and
Hmm.
like it was literally like me and like one or two other people who were going early in the morning still. So I think a lot of people by the end were just kind of fed up. But
Tired.
yeah, I think tired and frustrated
Hmm.
because a lot of
Same thing.
yeah, I think a lot of people had a lot of like they were just like chasing thoughts the whole time, and
Hmm.
yeah, like this one guy was telling me about like his meditations, and he was talking about these thoughts he was having. I was like, dude, you're not doing it right. Like you shouldn't be chasing those thoughts. That's the whole point of this. But
Yeah. Let those thoughts go. Exactly.
yeah,
Come back to the body. Uh,
yeah,
Um, at one point during the retreat, getting later into it, when they're doing the body scans, they expect you to be able to speed it up.
yeah,
In the beginning, they do little piece by little piece, part by part, but eventually they begin to speed it up with the idea that you can scan the whole body
yeah,
very, very quickly
yes,
and find that sensations are then coming from everywhere, all over the place. The whole body becomes woken up and alive.
yeah,
And so that was something that you could start practicing at the Goenka retreats right from the very beginning through the hour. So in the beginning, you go start for the very, very slow scans, and then you
yeah,
speed them up. So by the end of the hour, you're like that shimmering white.
yeah. So I think I was able to speed up the scan, but I don't think I got to because they said, everything will break up into a bunch of vibrations. I don't think I experienced that.
It does. Everything is vibrating. The whole body is just
Yeah, so
all over your body.
yeah. Yeah, no, I'm not. I definitely think that some people did from what they said afterward, but I don't think I experienced that. I experienced, I was very, I mean, I could put my focus wherever I wanted, and the scan was great, and I got that down, and I could do it pretty fast. I could do it, going down and maybe a few seconds, going up in a few seconds, but I never experienced this kind of like shimmering or this kind of vibratory thing. I don't think I got there. So that would be something. I guess if I did it again, maybe I
Yeah,
would.
you might you might continue with the body scanning that way with the intention of going ahead and getting the mind so that it can do the body scan. Literally, the hand moves like this. You can actually move with your mind down just like that, and
Mm-hmm.
then you come back again, and
Mm-hmm.
then down again, and then back again, and then it becomes like the whole thing. You don't have to do that much of it anymore. It's just already there. By the time you're moving your hand down, it's still there. So it brings the body into a uh, vibrantly alive would be the right way of saying it.
Yeah. One thing is one of my main kind of involuntary things is my left foot will like kick sometimes. And the annoying thing was, so I was on a bunk bed on the top bunk, and like I'd be laying there before I went to sleep, and my foot would just be kicking like crazy. And like I think it's probably annoying to the guy below me. I don't know. I mean, just like every 30 seconds or something, you'd get a little kick again. I was thinking, man, I must be the most annoying person here. But it was anyway, yeah, maybe it's worth giving it another shot then. I don't know.
Yeah, leave your options open. Maybe
Yeah.
taking a weekend or finding retreat centers. Eventually, you'll want to take a long retreat, but taking a few short ones, or if you can, the Christmas Goenka retreat.
Yeah.
Because I don't think that you're going to be violating their rules about uh, practicing something different. Because that rule was made up when people were really practicing
No,
something
and the thing
different.
is, I understand that, but the instructor himself, because they do it by gender, um, he doesn't have that context, and he'll be asking me about the specific practice, and I'll have to lie to him, and that's even if it is.
I wouldn't lie to him. What I would do is listen to what he's saying very carefully and put that into the context with what you're able to do for yourself.
Yeah, yeah. So at the moment, what I'm.
Because even for him, there is more than just body scanning.
Mhm.
And so when he questions you, because you're already going to be doing the body scanning, you've got time during the hour to do more than just body scanning, but you should be doing some body scanning every hour, whether you're in a Goenka retreat or not.
Yeah, yeah.
The
Okay.
question is, how much of the body are you going to scan? Well, the answer is that generally we're working with the body of breath. And I told you about, I think, the disagreement between Achan Thanissaro and Bhikkhu Bodhi. Because Bhikkhu Bodhi in his translation put in square brackets a phrase in the Anapanasati Sutra translation that Thanissaro says, oh no, you've got to take that out. Then they had a conversation, and then Bhikkhu Bodhi decided, yeah, it has to come out, and he told the publisher, but it's never come out. That was in the first edition. I think they're in their fourth edition now, and that phrase is still in there.
What phrase?
Okay. The phrase is embraces of breath. Now, let me give you that in context. It's the step 3 of Anapanasati to experience the whole body, in brackets, of breath. So the question is, are you going to experience the whole body of breath, or are you going to experience the whole body?
I've come
Because
across this before. I didn't realize that this is why this was confusing because this is one of the first exposures I had to different translations. Yeah, because some people say, are you experiencing the whole body as you're breathing? And some people say, is it just the body of the breath that you're experiencing or whatever? That's
while
it.
you're breathing and you're experiencing the breathing, you're experiencing the body of the breath, which at best could be starting at the nose and the nostrils through the trachea and the inside, as well as on the outside, so that if you're breathing and taking a deep breath, your abdomen will extend, the diaphragm will fall, the chest will open,
Yeah.
you're taking in air, As you're breathing in, you can feel the sides, you can feel the back, and all right, you get it to feel really good too. And then up into the shoulders, and you've already had experience with tensions in your shoulders. So when you're working with the shoulders, you're in that full breath. You should work with relaxing those shoulders, especially on that out breath,
Mm-hmm.
to take all of the tensions out of the body during that out breath. And so you relax. Now, in the actual sutta itself, it does not have a breath. And so Goenka, when he's doing leg scans, that's actually more correct in the sutta than merely working with just the body of the breath.
Yeah.
And yet, we want to work with the body of the breath, even in the Goenka system. They say, feel that rising and falling.
Yeah.
Feel that abdomen. Feel all of this stuff, because every time you breathe, you are going to feel that stuff. But they do then the rest of the body scan with other kinds of sensations. In the sense, you've got to feel the touch of the cloth. You have to feel the actual sitting in the sense of the pressure from gravity and the body itself. And that you can feel that throughout the proprioceptive systems. You know what I mean by proprioceptic? Sure.
Yeah.
Okay. So you don't have to do the experiment of closing your eyes and putting your hand in the air and figuring out where it is and then checking, and yeah, you knew where it was because you can feel where things are.
Yeah.
That's also part of the whole body experience, is to actually feel the whole body, to put
Mm-hmm.
it into the context of the sitting. And so this is exactly where Goenka and Mahasi are the same teaching: rising, falling, touching, sitting.
Yeah.
Goenka just has a very stylized way of doing the rising, falling, touching, sitting. So
Mm-hmm.
rising and falling then is the body of breath. The touching and the sitting then is the whole body.
Yeah.
Okay. When you recognize it like that, you say, oh, yeah, there's no problem with this.
Mm-hmm.
Because you're just merely adding on, you're just piling on. You're not, in fact, by doing the entire part of anapanasati, doesn't mean that now you're forsaking anapanasati.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so if they are staying basically with step 1, 2, and 3, and a little bit of step 4, we're going to add other things in there that are normally naturally added to that. And the Goenka talks about it. He just doesn't put it in as a particular step of anapanasati. For example, when the mind wanders away, that when means sati now has come, because you can see the mind wandering away. Never mind, start again. To
Mm-hmm.
do that means that you're already doing step 13 of anapanasati. You're doing step 9 of anapanasati. You're doing step 10 of anapanasati if you're gladdening the mind.
Mm-hmm.
All right. So, in fact, the Goenka method itself has other aspects of anapanasati built into it. They just never talk about it in the sense of this formalized method that I'm using.
Mm-hmm.
But they do talk about, but they do bring those things in. The point that they make the least amount is the issue of gladdening the mind.
Yeah.
To gladden the mind, to do that over and over and over again, gladdening the mind is one's right effort, giving one's right attitude, the attitude of a winner, because this is pleasurable. This is good to do. This is happy. This is wholesome. This is good skill to be developed. All of that's coming out of right view. All right. So you will have all four of these things: right view, right sati, right effort, and right attitude
Mm-hmm.
working together. Goenka talks about them, but not in that language.
Mm-hmm.
Never mind, start again. In fact, if you hear that phrase correctly, that's actually step 10 of Anapanasati. Never mind that stuff. Throw it out. Come on back to the breath. Enjoy yourself.
Mm-hmm.
Never mind. Start again.
Yeah.
And so, um, because we're hearing the same message, are, let us say, two different versions of the same story with the same moral. We have to be able to put those two stories together to recognize, oh, it's just one story. It's just 2 days, two different ways of telling the story.
Mm-hmm.
And that because of the internet, we have the chance here on the internet to tell the long story, to tell the
Yeah.
real detailed story. But there is nothing that I know of that I'm teaching that disagrees with Goenka in any respect at all.
Yeah. I actually really enjoy his Dharma talks. They're very entertaining.
He
They're
is.
good.
He really is. And I've got numbers of stories I remember that I don't tell. One is about the ring that has the label in it, "This too shall pass." Do you
Uh-huh.
remember that story?
Yes.
Yeah, so there's a lot of stories he's got that are really, really good stories.
Yeah. Yeah. Um,
But he did exactly the wrong thing, just like Bhikkhu Buddhadasa. They both did the wrong thing at the wrong time. They died.
Impermanence and all that, I guess.
Anicca Vata Sankara, especially old monks.
Yeah. Cool.
All right. Well,
Yeah.
I think that we've well covered this topic about retreats. I think that you've got many options open. Don't
Hmm.
worry your boss about it because you've got other options.
Yeah, no, it's that we've been discussing negotiation kind of things on and off a bit. And this is just something I'm thinking that it might make more sense for me to, rather than asking for what I was, maybe it might make more sense to say, this is actually more important that I get this additional time off. I was just kind of thinking it through a little bit.
Mhm. Okay. Well, we've come up with a lot of options. You still got Goenka on the table, and you've got what was his name in California? Uh, you were mentioning him, the friend of
Tucker.
Noah. Yeah, Tucker. Right. I've
So
actually had an email from Tucker.
uh-huh. He's a great guy.
So um, you've got all of these different possibilities. I like to going to the weekend to the woods to go to the state park.
And the
Our
thing
family
is,
had a lot of state parks when I was a
I'm actually
kid.
going hiking tomorrow. Yeah, I drive pretty regularly. I drive a couple hours away just to do hiking. I've been wanting to do camping anyway, so maybe I will.
Yeah, drop your tent in the back of the car and take off. Well, you've got a dog with you, so I don't know about.
Just till Wednesday, then this one's gone.
Okay. All right, Dan. Well, this is a good chat. I've enjoyed it, and
Me
we'll
too.
end later.
All right.
Don't forget the standing up
I won't.
when. All righty.
Bye bye.
Bye.